the OpenET presentation. Okay. Okay.
You can start, right?
Yeah, you can start.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Catherine Osorio, and I will explain you now the OpenET platform, filling the biggest data gap in water management. Okay, the course of this presentation is first to present remote sensing technology improvements for water assessment in agricultural, natural, urban areas, and water bodies. Second, to describe OpenET platform technological support. And the last, to introduce application cases in consumptive use, monitoring different crops similar to the Egyptian ones. This is the OpenET platform as you see in the web page. You can access by writing this link, openetdata.org. So OpenET platform is an online platform, provides easily accessible satellite-based estimates of ET for improved water management across the Western US. It gives you information in field scale and in raster of 30 by 30 meters of resolution, and you can get information daily, monthly, and annual time basis. Well, besides that, here you can select the year of interest. Now is having information until the 2022 year. Here is the value, for example, ET. And here is the modes. You can have the field scale mode or the raster view. Here you have the option to change from units from millimeters to inches, to highlight the cities if you are kind of lost to find your field of interest. This is the scale of values of ET. And here in the search space, you can put your coordinates or the name of the city to find the area of interest. For example, here we are in Logan now. It's the northern part of Utah. You can select a field there. For example, here is Hiram, it's in the south of Logan. You select the field and then you have here the plot of the monthly ET values across the year. How OpenET works. The inputs that OpenET uses is satellite data, mainly Landsat data. That is currently the only one that combines thermal and optical data for field scale studies. Besides that, it uses Sentinel-2, GOES, Suomi, MPP, Terra, Aqua, and other satellites. OpenET uses as inputs weather station for networks, such as GridMet, Spatial, CIMIS, DayMet, PRISM, and NLDAS. It uses field boundaries to define the limits of the parcels. It mainly uses the state database of these field boundaries, but if there is no this state information, they use the USDA dataset. And they use crop type data too. So OpenET uses ET models that is basically around surface energy balance model that is called SEP. So these models tries to figure out the amount of energy that the plant and soil uses, so in liquid water, to be transformed into vapor that is released to the atmosphere. The models that they use is 6 models, and they have different ways to approach the variables of the surface energy balance. For example, these 3, Alexi, E-metric, and G-Sebal, they use the optical, for example, shortwave, and thermal long-wave data for approaching these variables estimation. And these 2 models, the PTJPL and the SEBOP, they are simplified approaches, and some cases they ignore some variables. And the SIMS model, they use the surface reflectance data and crop time information for solving this model. Now, how OpenET estimates ET? So first, they estimate the reference ET. It's called ETO from the grid-aware data, and they use for this the Penman-Motil equation for calculate reference ET for grass. Then, as second step, they calculate the ET fraction. So they don't use the crop coefficient; they calculate the ET fraction. The ET fraction is the they get the satellite actual ET that comes from the Landsat satellite. And this data is gathered every 8 days. And they get this satellite ETA data, and it's divided by the ETO that they calculated the previous step. Then the third step, the ET fraction is linearly interpolated on daily time step per pixel. So you have per 8 days, now you have every day thanks to this linear interpolation. Then they multiply this fraction by the daily ETO that they calculated in the first step, so they can have the daily actual ET. And then they have already this daily information. They gather them and they estimate the monthly and the annual aggregation of this information. Here I present some examples. In California, we found most crops similar to the Egyptian ones. It's in the West USA, this state, California, and the crops are located in the northeast area of San Francisco. You can try by yourself, OpenET. You have to put this link in the browser, openetdata.org. You have to go to the Explore Data button and then to the View Field Summaries. For example, if you do that, as I mentioned, you can put this coordinate in the field, in the research box area. When you put that coordinate there, it appears like this, like the several field boundaries, and then you select what you are interested in, and then you will get this monthly ET data along the year, and then you have a bigger plot where it specifies here, for example, this area is rice, the area in hectares, and where they assign a code for this. And here you can see the ensemble. So apart from these 6 models, they calculate the average of these 6 models, and they call it ensemble. So here you see the ensemble. According to them, is the best choice if you are kind of confused with model to choose for your area. You can choose the ensemble. Well, here you see, for example, that the ET is decreasing along the time for rice. Other example, you can add this coordinate in this search box to the same way as before. And this is for corn and soybean. So it seems that during the year they rotate between these 2 crops, and you see the same way December, and then you can activate to the range, so the maximum and the minimum values per month, and the other models if you are interested in. Well, here we see also a decreasing trend of the ET along the time period from 2018 to 2023. Other area, for example, in this coordinate, sunflower. So in the same way, you put the coordinates in the search box, and you see a different behavior here of ET. Sometimes it's low, sometimes it's high, and again low. Other example, cotton. Again, the same coordinates. So if you don't know the coordinates, the city, so you locate your field of interest, and then you get the monthly plot. It's kind of stable, but with a little decreasing the last part of the period. Here are some references if you want to go further in this OpenET platform. Specifically the papers that talks in more detail about each model. And this is a way that they show the raster data in OpenET. So little by little, they are trying to cover whole USA. They started in the West because it's the most arid area in the country. But little by little, they are trying to gather all the country. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Carmen. So what you're seeing in this presentation is the operational implementation of remote sensing ET models available to anybody in the US free of charge. So this is because one, these models have been validated against eddy covariance lysimeters across the US. And they have been validated for years. And these models that Catherine have presented demonstrate that they have a good accuracy. So nowadays, and we can do the exercise. Let's go to the website.
Mm-hmm.
And if you also, if you have the computer or your cell phone, you can type the website. Is etdata dot etdata.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
OpenET data. No entiendo su computadora.
Bueno. Yeah. Okay. This is the website of OpenET. You can register with your Gmail. You click on Explore Data. In this case, go ahead. There are two options. There is the free access, as Catherine just access, but also there is an option to log in into the website. So you can zoom in into any location. You can go to Logan, for example. Explore events. So the effort done by the OpenET team is that they have put together all these algorithms in Google Engine. Remember this platform I mentioned before, where there is the satellite data collected by Google in the cloud? Well, the OpenET team decided to translate all the algorithms in Python or different languages. They make it compatible with Google Engine. So they brought all the major developers of these ET models, put them in a room until they figure out how to run their models in Google Engine. So with that, then OpenET approached the different organizations like the state of Utah, the state of California, to get the parcel information, the boundaries of every parcel. If it's a center pivot, it has to be a circle. If it's a grass area, it could be a rectangle. So this is the parcels that are present in the south part of this valley, the Cache Valley. So we can click on any field. Once we click on the field, we have to, the website is retrieving the data for that specific field. It will give us average values of monthly data. So this is 2018, 19, 20, 21, until 2023. And we see the total monthly values happening every month. So I have the option to get the average model, they call it the ensemble, or I have also the option to access every individual model. For example, let's say I'm familiar with methods, I'm familiar with CBAL. I can choose in the options that particular model I'm more familiar with. So not all the models give you the same value. So now Catherine has plotted has selected all the models, each model represented by a dot color, and you see that not all the models give you the same value, and that's.
Can you repeat how you create this
timeline? Close these the windows. Close. Okay. Are you in this view? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If you are, you click in this. Click on any field.
View.
So you have to be in the view, has to be field view.
View what?
Explore data, then field view.
Field view.
Uh-huh.
Manager.
Okay. Let's zoom in again, Catherine.
In Salt Lake, we are.
Click here. Here. Not here. Yep. And now choose any areas. Double click in any area that has green.
I have to go explore, no?
Yeah, explore data. Exactly.
Click on a field, Catherine.
And you can choose. Now just click here. Okay, the field smart. Yep. And now you just zoom in and select one field data and double click and you have to have the dates.
So these windows appears when you click on a field. And now you have the monthly values. So OpenET is not saying your crop season started in April, no, it's calculated for every month of the year. The user decides what month they want. Okay, so for example, if I'm growing corn, I'm planting it in June and I'm harvesting in August. So I can select from this archive of data, I can select the months that I'm interested in. But they will calculate also during the winter time. They just calculate the data. So this is the ensemble model, which is the average of all the models implemented. But you can select on the left side each model, and you can see that every model, remember, is an approximation. It's a numerical approximation of a phenomenon.
Mhm.
So remote sensing is trying to estimate ETs. So we will see always differences between models. So how we know which model should I select for my region? For example, for Cache Valley, or for Las Vegas, or for Phoenix, or for California. So what we do, like the universities, what we're doing is we're putting eddy covariance towers in certain places in the state, and we are comparing all the different models compared to that eddy covariance. And if we find 2 or 3 that work, that give us good data all across, we say, yes, state of Utah, we recommend you to use these models from OpenET. So the user decides what to use. OpenET will do the calculations and let you decide. For example, for Utah, it has been selected the metric model works better than the other models. Now, but for other locations, for California, the SIMS also works good.
One better, another
In the same place, there could be one that is better, 2, 3, or all. What it make it different? remember, every model is an approximation of reality, right? How they formulate equations to calculate net radiation, to calculate ground heat flux. There are in every model there are assumptions. There are 6 different models here. Each of them has different assumptions. So in one location they might work really well, but in other location might not. So for us, the end user of the data, we need to double check that. That's the job of the university, that's the job of the state government, to make sure that whatever data is recommended to the public, we double check. And that's why we put any covariance towers around the state. So
Can know before which model will. Yeah, tested.
we have to test. We have right now, OpenET has been available for 2 years. So it's a brand new platform that we are getting familiar with. So every state here in the country is validating. They are putting instrumentation out there to collect data for several years, several seasons, and then report back which of the models we should recommend to the general public to use. So is this the this is the, okay, this, so we have also information about ET fraction. And ET fraction, we say that in concept looks like the KC, but when we plot the data, it doesn't behave like crop coefficient. It's kind of crop coefficient, but it's not the crop. Okay, the best way to separate crop coefficient for fractional ET or ET fraction is like crop coefficient is an average of multiple seasons of every phenological state. Okay, it's an average value. ET fraction or fractional ET is the ratio of actual ET divided by the potential ET, but only for today, because today decided to rain, today decided to be cloudy. So my crop coefficient and my fractional ET will be different. So let's say crop coefficient is an average historical value that represent the initial period, the growing, the development. But ET fraction is what happened today. And it might be higher than the KC, lower than the KC. It doesn't have to match the KC.
The profile.
You will depend on the crop type and the variety.
That is only for USA.
Yes, and there has been talks about implementing this solution for other countries. But the thing is that these other countries must contact OpenET. This has been a major effort. The data is free, but running the servers, preparing the data is not free. So there has to be, so let's say a country wants to have an OpenET for their country. Okay, do we have the financial and technical resources in the country to implement this? This might be cost probably 2-3 million per year to run. But seems like a big number. Divide 3 million per year by the number of farms you have in the country. How much is that?
One example is Brazil is developing the same platform. They call that OpenET, and OpenET is providing support with Brazil development. As Dr. Torres said, Brazil is providing funding.
But Professor, they collect first the data from the state, right? They collect first the data, then they do the models in the database.
So the spatial data is free data, NASA data, Landsat, Sentinel, so that's free. What needs to come from the state or from the government is the parcels, the polygons of every parcel. Also, we need the crop mass. What is growing in every plot? What's growing? I mean, what is growing in the new delta? In every individual farm. What is growing in the new delta? In the old delta, every individual farm. That's an effort. That is an effort because we need to develop a consistent and continuous database. That because let's say the farmer is cultivating today cotton, after 3-4 years, he will switch to another crop, right?
Yeah.
So somebody has to update that database. So there has to be not only the initial investment, but also a continuous investment to keep these databases updated. But imagine that you have this platform and then you can go to producers and say, look, we see that in previous years you have been using less water, but this year you used more water. Do you remember what happened? Or maybe you have issues with your irrigation system and it was putting more water than you do. Maybe we can train you. Maybe we can provide you training. Maybe your irrigation system needs a checkup. So having information about ET allow us to do this extension work, allow us to visit with the community of farmers, the groups that manage the water to an area and say, look, these are the total water used by the crop. Another way to use this data is, this is ET. Give me the accumulated, please, in OpenET. Okay, this is the accumulated for the year. I got the accumulated value. Okay, every farmer has an idea how much water they apply, how much cubic meters, or the unit of water volume they apply. Here you have the total volume for the season that ET, or the total ET amount. If you take this value and divide it by the total water application, what do you get? Yes, you start getting into efficiency. We can initially evaluate the efficiency of every farm. Like if the ratio, for example, if EP a value and I divide it by the total irrigation and the value is 0.8, what would you tell me? Is that farmer doing good or doing bad? If the total ET for the season is one value, the irrigation water is another value. I divide the two values. The result is 0.8. Is that farm doing well or not? Why not? Okay, but what should be the efficiency there? What is the efficiency of a drip irrigation system?
85%.
Yes.
Around 85%.
What about a sprinkler system?
Around 75%.
What about surface irrigation?
Around 52.
So if I'm getting 80, what would you tell me? Is that farmer doing well or bad? Irrigation system. But if it's doing 80, it's good already. It's already the high end. But I could be looking at others that are in the 50%, 60%, 40% and say, those producers need help. Something is not working here.
Mm-hmm.
They might be applying too much water, but maybe they're trying to compensate for salinity. They might be trying to cultivate like rice, like submerged rice. So there will be different cases, but these values already give us a starting point to check on efficiencies, on water efficiencies. So that's the goal of OpenET, to provide this database free of charge. So from the state government to the producer, everybody has the same numbers. So it's not that the producer might be using metric, the state is using CBAL, everybody no. everybody get the same numbers. And when we have to implement projects for improvement of efficiency of irrigation water, we all have the same numbers to refer to.
But it's not it is actual evapotranspiration.
This is actual evapotranspiration. This is actual. Remember, this is remote sensing. This is not potential. This is not reference. This is actual evapotranspiration.
Okay, so no ground data are collected.
Ground data. The ground data collected here, crop time.
Ah, yeah.
Crop time.
Yeah.
Also, weather stations. The weather stations have to send their data to a database in the cloud. So, and this database is connected to the OpenET platform, so it can do the reference ET calculation. Okay, that also, it's important to double check the numbers. It's important to implement eddy covariance powers in key locations. So we can verify, you can develop the trust on the results of the map. Because if somebody comes and tell you, hey, you are using too much water, you need to reduce your water usage by 20%, but there is no validation of that data, how do you feel? And you really tell them to reduce 20%? So that's somewhat the message we're trying to say. It's not only to get the satellite data, the drone data, and run it through the algorithm and call it good. We also have to have validation data sources in the area. It doesn't have to be permanent. It could be 2-3 years there, but that's enough time for us to collect the satellite data, the drone data, check the algorithms, and recommend, yes, it's working. Our accuracy for ET estimation is within 10% or within 15%. So OpenET has done this work. Karen is telling us now Brazil is going to have their own OpenET, okay? Yeah. And they are investing towards that. So that's the idea, that the OpenET team would like to collaborate with other countries if they find value on what they did. Okay, questions?
Maybe contributing, but there is also like, it's not that detailed information, but for Africa, FAO, they created vapor, but that's more related to water productivity, but you cannot analyze this time series like here, but that's at least something that you can play with in order to, and I think the idea of this is like, oh, this technology can in the future become like a useful tool for agricultural decision makers. So if you want to check something for Egypt, you can try that.
Okay, Kathy, now that you're in the raster, could you go to the Great Salt Lake, please?
Staying on the slow.
Yeah. One of the interesting things now is, aside from irrigation, some of the models in OpenET can calculate open water evaporation. So what are the losses of water in reservoirs and lakes? OpenET has allowed some of the ET models in OpenET can calculate that open water evaporation. So just click anywhere in the lake. So these are the monthly rates of evaporation, of water loss in the lake. This is because this is on water, on open water. So this is evaporation. So when doing water balance in a basin and you have a reservoir, this might come, this might help you to understand where is part of the water in your water balance. You got direct evaporation from the surface. Oh, also, OpenET is is pushing or is trying to do daily ET. Daily ET that it so far is not real time. OpenET is 3 months behind today. The data in the platform is 3 months, but their goal is that we can have the data up to yesterday. So if so we can start using this data for irrigation planning. For now, it's irrigation accounting. What happened last year? What happened 5 years ago? But for irrigation management, day to day, they are still working on that. So in the future, next year, we will have up to yesterday estimations of daily ET. So we already, myself and another colleague, we did an evaluation of OpenET. We found that for the state of Utah, for the most arid area in the south, one of the models is better than all the others. The metric model was the better, showed better because we compared the data from OpenET against an covariance study. So now we have the confidence that that model, we need to evaluate it more on other sites in the state, but we have a candidate that can be used for water management.
Yeah.
Right, questions about OpenET?
Can you super-
Abuela, el proceso de una abuela, es un proceso de una abuela solo.
Yes, the thing is, there has to be an initial interest from the country. So if Egypt would like to see something similar for farmland in Egypt, the Egypt government must talk with the OpenET team. Because the government of Brazil did that, and now they're developing OpenET for Brazil. All right, well, any questions?
One
Yes.
question more, sorry. I can apply this in Google Earth Engine. I can get this data information.
Yes, Google type OpenET. There is, it's not the latest data, it's up to last year data. They are posting the data there, so you can, I mean, anybody interested on the raster data can do analysis on that. Yes. Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much, Catherine. And this has been very, very useful. Okay, next we have Moises Duran that is going to give us an explanation on the ET models that our research group is using, the two-source energy balance model. So maybe we can take 5 minutes break if you want. Okay, get some water, get some cookie, because this part is very intense on formulas and equations. So so if you want to stretch your leg for 5 minutes and get some water or go to the restroom, this is the time. There you go. How's it? Yeah. Yeah. You go here. The other one. So you work with OpenET? Yeah.
Me confunde cada rato.
What I like to do is
Necesito mi mouseito.
¿Necesitas el mouse? Bueno, ya está abierto, así que ya no lo necesito.
Un poco raro proyectarlo de página web.
Bueno, mientras.
remember that when you level 0, this is level 0. What is level 1? DOA. So we want level. We want level. So don't look at this from here. Go to the parallel. Now it's level 7. Level. What level is this one?
When I select,
Okay.
Actually, if I the installation of
Well, there are, yes, you can include like images that are very cloudy, but sometimes there is a tiny cloud in the middle of your area. So you can flip it up, you can remove it, or choose another. Later, yeah.
Like this and one.
No, it's less than. No, take one is 1%. So you're saying that only 8 pixels have to have cloud. So if you can find it, sometimes there are regions in the world where always cloud is possible. So you need to increase 10%, 20%, because 100% is all cloud.
When I increase it, I get the more realistic data or not?
Realistic data,
More accurate data.
well, the data is actually.
Sometimes it don't touch definitely. Less.
No. For example, when I do that, I try to limit search by boundary boundaries. So I say,
From special needs.
Yeah.
Something like this.
yes. But you, I know you're doing JavaScript. Are you good in JavaScript?
Yes, I'm right.
Yes. Have you tried Python?
I didn't see.
Can program in JavaScript? Python is easier.
I have a small.
This is to do Google ranking. YouTube channel. Here are all the tutorials for all the type of codes over there. Classification, visualization, raster algebra. So here is called to download the very just one line. If I connect it, the JavaScript, you require more steps. This is better. It is better, and you can combine Python functions with Google Engine. So you can use NumPy, you can use, let's call it this, tables in Python. Pandas, yeah, you can use pandas also, you can extract the, let's say you have 10 points in the image, you want to extract the values, you tell. Yeah, the values, yeah, exactly. The way it is, I would recommend you to check the I teach my students this in the remote sensing class, they learn how to code and oh, why don't you get started?
But you can sign in.
But I'm not
No, no, no.
So, but if you are here in this computer, you can see, but you can try. You can, I believe the most closest to that.
What's your name again? Okay. Really good. I like it. Let's chat more. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's see, everybody. We have a lot of material to cover. And we're recording everything. With some luck, we will have everything posted already. So,
Can you send us the YouTube channel?
yes. Also, we need, before you leave, I understand that there is a WhatsApp channel for everybody that you are here.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Maybe that will be good that me and the others in the group get added to that channel so we can communicate with you. Here is the YouTube channel. Or, hey, don't forget to bring your raincoat because it's going to rain. So give you some alerts about what we're doing every day.
All right.
All right. All right.
That's like,
Tu nombre es el primero que te envié.
no le has puesto, pero es el Leticia.
¿Seguro?
Es el Leticia. No, no te preocupes, se ha confundido, pero solo el nombre.
Sí.
Okay. Okay. Now we have Moises Duran, and he is going to talk with us about one of the ET models, the two-source energy balance model. So, Moises, they're all yours.
Hello, guys. Who's not exhausted? Who's not tired? Yeah, I know. I know you're all tired. And I know also that this topic I'm gonna talk about now is very exhausting because it's full of formulas and equations. But basically, what I only need to you is to understand just two basic concepts that I'll show you later. But before I started talking about this model, I want to board these 3 points first. I want to you, for real, raise your hand, whoever has worked in the past with any ET model. It could be Penman Montate model, metric model. Have you all worked or have you ever? One. You have never worked with any ET model in the past, right? Yeah, it's totally understandable. I need to understand that because I'm going to board a very hard ET model now. So since the beginning, we need you to understand about evapotranspiration. I think after this session we had today, we all know what is evapotranspiration now, right? Evaporation plus transpiration. It sounds like so redundative, like so repetitive, but these are two different concepts. Okay? And that's where this model boards about partitioning these two concepts and then starting to taking decisions of what each concept is telling me from my numbers. Okay. So you from this session you had today, you remember the Penman-Monteith model that professor talked before? No? My friend that raised her hand, can you tell us about the Penman-Monteith model, very basically, what you understand about the Penman-Monteith model?
So a model consists of number of parameters like radiation and temperature and you can put,
Temperature of the air, right?
maybe when I don't think so. A lot of
Mm.
parameters. Just like
Yeah, it's so the goal when it comes to irrigation is about the quantity of water I need to add to my crops, right? And to know what is what is that number, what is that quantity, we call it like the depth of irrigation that is given in millimeters, right? So how to calculate if you have your crop here, right? How much water I need to apply. And then in the past, they developed a lot of models where the most successful and most famous model was the Penman-Monteith model. Penman-Monteith, which was a model that included a lot of meteorological data like temperature of the air, solar radiation, also some concepts related to the crops. And then after a lot of formulas, they give like, okay, today 5 millimeters, right? And that based on data of just one day, on just values of average of the whole day. But also there were simpler methods, just singular equations from maximum temperature of the air at the day, minimum temperature, varies a lot. And there is a lot of bias because when you start to record those values from meteorological stations, the data varies a lot. But since remote sensing start to get more used, we realize that we can vary our direction of how to understand, how to calculate this ET value with new methods. And that's when these energy balance methods arise, like the Sebal model, like the metric model that you just saw in the OpenET platform. Those maps of ET that you just saw for US is based on metric, on Sebal, which is based in the energy balance models. Okay, so now that you understand that ET is a value that I need to know about the quantity of water I need to apply to my crop, now it's how to estimate it. And we're going to talk about the energy balance models. Balance model. Okay. This is a pixel. This is just one pixel. Okay. Another question. From your session that you just received some hours ago about remote sensing, who remember what is multispectral? Our multispectral sensor.
Sorry?
You, Professor Alfonso, just a very fast question. Did you board about multispectral sensors in the morning?
Yes, we talk about the red, green, and blue, and the thermal data, right?
That's a multispectral information. So when we take a picture from with the drone, right? This, and it has a camera. The more expensive the camera, the more information we collect. So we collect information for red, green, blue. So far, this is like any other regular camera, but we also collect information for red edge, near infrared, and also thermal information, right? So what it means for me, all of these values. So this is data that we cannot see with our eyes. This is like the predator. You know the movie about the predator? That is this animal, this monster that attacks to the people, but he's totally blind. He only can see infrared, right? So we are basically gaining eyes, those special eyes to see different values that we cannot see with our real eyes, right? In field. But what all that information means. I mean, when we have an NDVI map, you just saw NDVI maps. Do you remember? That is a basic vegetation index, right? So we have a map of a parcel. We have NDVI of 0.3 here, 0.7 here. NDVI goes from 0 to 1. Okay? The closer to 1, it means it's healthy. The closer to 0, not healthy. So this is better than this one. But what does this mean? So it means that this needs more water. It's an infection. No, it could be so many things. There is so many data combined there in just one value that we need to figure out what does it mean. So that's what I wanted to call by ICU. So before coming to the States, I was in ICU because COVID. And when I woke up, I saw that the doctors put a lot of sensors in my body and they took decisions from that. So it was not only that I was having temperature or fever, they also look at my pulse, they also look at my saturation and many different things. So then they could decide on what was going on with my body and take decision, right? So what it all comes is that back to the energy balance model. Energy balance models in the past, based on the metric system, Sebal system, they all combine the thermal infrared band is just one value. But this one value is combining crop and soil information. So we don't know if we're over-irrigating or sub-irrigating over that valley. So we need to separate what is actually the crop losing and what is evaporation contained by only bare soil. Because when you have your parcel, your crops only represents this small part, right? But when you got the pixels, it's combining probably structures, probably soil. You need to separate all of these values. And then is when the two-source energy balance model rise up. Two energy balance models, what they do is separate the ET information, evaporation that comes from the soil, that comes from all the surface of the earth, and transpiration. That's the only value that we need for irrigation. Yesterday, Dr. Larry Hibbs, he was saying, this information is very basic to understand. We need from all the water that is evaporating from the surface, we only need to obtain what the crop is losing. The concept is simple, but measuring is not simple because all this information is combined in these bands, right? So we need to start to separate all of them. So the two-source energy balance model propose a method to start calculating in small pieces the components of ET, and then we only will work with the transpiration estimation. Okay. So when we got when we're in field and we're exposed to the sun, the only source of energy in field is the sun. So we can tell that this solar radiation is the total net radiation that is arriving at the surface of the Earth, right? But what happens with that energy? How is distributing in field? It's distributing. This is what the Earth loses. I'm gonna connect this with this later. I just wanted to know what we want to obtain, transpiration, okay? Side. When the energy of the sun arrives, it divides into different values. The latent heat flux value, the sensible heat flux, and soil heat flux. What is each of these? So in sum, sensible heat flux, it means how much the total surface of the Earth is starting to warm, to getting warm and to gaining energy. Latent. Raise your hand who has ever taken a thermodynamics class in university or whatever, probably school. Do you remember what it means, the Latin expression in thermodynamics? No, it's no problem. It's very odd. I mean, Latin is associated to the change of phase of the material. So it means when the water evaporates. So when the water evaporates, you're putting energy on water. What is this? Like this. Yeah. Temperature, energy. You can see there this. Okay. So when you're boiling water and you're from 0 to 100, okay? You're going from 0 to 100. You're adding energy to get this, to increase just 1 centigrade, just 1 grade Celsius. But then when you get to the 100s, there's a jump. And because you need to break that phase, that border, that increase of energy is called latent. And it's a lot of energy that is needed to be added. So this wall of energy that is getting fractured in our surface is what the crop is losing as water. So now we understand that all this energy that we're receiving from the sun is converting first in, of course, the surface is getting warmer, it's getting temperature, that's the whole surface, but then there is a border, a smaller fraction that is evaporating. That's latent. We just separate two different concepts. If we can estimate both, we can say how much we need to add to our crops, how much we need to irrigate. And then there is a third value, the soil heat flux, that is like just for your record, we will not ignore, but it's so insignificant when you calculate daily ET that we may ignore for daily value. But when it comes for seasonal analysis, for example, if you want to analyze how much water it was evapotranspirated in a year or in 6 months, then this is about 10%, between 10% to 30% of the total value. Okay, but for daily values, we may ignore it. Of course, I'm going to show you how it calculates. It's a very horrible formula, but I'm telling you about how to estimate this, but I'm not telling you what is this. This is part of the energy that is staying in the Earth, because the Earth, at the end of the day, is a whole rock. It's a massive rock with a lot of energy, and it's containing a lot of energy inside of it, right? So we have 3 values that are on the surface and one that is staying held by the Earth, okay? So here we can see the partition. The solar radiation is arriving, and one part is being gained by the surface. It's the heat flux, and the latent heat flux is by the crops. We just put different colors so you can tell one is related to the soil and one is related to the crop. but we can, in the pictures, we can see that it's all mixed, right? That's why it's all together there. It's easy to understand, but it's very difficult to measure. Partition of energy fluxes between the soil and vegetation. Okay. Balancing radius. We can go through this. We don't need to do this. Okay. So, what's the difference of measuring? Professor Alfonso, I have a very fast question. When we have a Landsat images, is an image that was taken in a blink, like when you take a picture, or how long it takes for a satellite to collect an image?
It's few seconds.
It's instantly, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's instantly. And most of these images taken by satellites are basically take during the day, about 10 or 12 p.m., right? 10 a.m. or 12 p.m., right? But that's an instant value. What we're obtaining when you fly a drone flight doesn't take more than 30 minutes. It's very fast. So basically we're having only one value here. But what we need to estimate is how much energy, how much water it was lost during a whole day, right? So we can compensate that. So what we do is we estimate those values, each of these values, and it will behave as a Gauss-Bell formula that we may need to adjust later. But basically, since we collect data here in different times of the day, we can approximate how much water was lost during the day. And that's part of our research we're doing now. What is the best time of the day to collect data? Of course, many people may think, let's do it at solar noon when it's maximum, right? But in real life, in field, it's not like you have the drone now and you have the people here all prepared every day, right? So we may need a window of time to collect data. That's part of our work we're doing now with, in my case, with almonds, our friend Karen with turf grass, etc. Okay, so we can approximate each of these values to a Gauss bell, and this Gauss bell is going to be adjusted by different methods. But in the next days, you're going to learn about the Priestley-Taylor approach that is basically working with only one image. So we go with the satellite takes one picture, we just work with that picture, with that thermal image. You go with a drone to the field, we just work with that thermal image. But you can go to more accurate values doing dual time difference, taking 2 different time of the day values, or doing a better arrange of the data. Okay, it's just for your record that there are more methods to refine this model that you're constructing for your field. Okay, so now we know that the total radiation is becoming 2 different types of energy, but these 2 types of energy is not like nature is. This is 100 this is 100 this is 0% this. No, we may have, so most of the sensible heat flux that is from the surface will come also from the crop. Not all is from the soil, and not all the latent heat flux, it comes from the crop. A small portion may come from the soil as well. So we need to divide each of these energies for crop. It's not here. Oh yeah, it's divided here. So portion of the solar radiation is coming to the crops from to the soil, and each component has each itself component of heat flux, latent heat, and the ground. Okay. The next formula, what it does is actually split each of these values. Let's bore first. Here's so far. I want to stop here because here's when the formula is going to start to going crazy. There is any question about sense. Yeah, I know it's very crazy how it goes. So I want you to ask you: is there any concern, something that was not understood about sensible heat flux or latent heat flux? Or Probably you may want me to repeat each concept. Raise your hand, because this is very hard, very tiny to understand too. Or any other question related with what I told you. No, so far? Oh, sure.
There's a type of radiation, radiation. Of each other.
That's right. Yeah, so we have our wavelength, right? For graphs, I think something like this. We have the visual light that is blue, green, red. This is short wave. You just saw this in remote sensing. Remember that the light can be decomposed in different fractions, as you're saying, right? Short wave is here. No, a little bit shorter. And long wave a lot more. Okay. So most of the long wave is contained in the near infrared thermal section. Just wait a second, please. But each of those give us a component in heat flux and also in latent. But please, Professor Alfonso, correct me if I may wrong. Latent is a bigger percentage of the latent is contained in the long wave and a shorter in the short wave. And for heat flux, it's more contained in short wave than lit in long wave.
Heat, you mean sensible heat or heat?
Latent, no. Oh, sorry, sensible. Sensible and latent. Thanks for the correction. So most of the latent is contained in long wave and most of the sensible in short wave. Okay? But it's not 100% is here, 100% is here, right? And that's why we're doing the split of the components of different inputs, right? Because we it's not that this model is accurate 100%. It will still have some gaps, right? But we're just reducing all of these gaps, separating, right? There was one question there. Sorry, oh, I think she just left. Oh, well, my apologies. Okay, it was clear.
If you I have this data and I want to it, how can you complete it?
Oh, yeah.
Short wave and long.
You want to say, okay. Karen can explain about that.
Yeah. Yesterday, Larry showed us three kinds of net variations that previously in this formula, net variations, that sensor is infrared polarization, avoid infrared polarization, but this sensor is measured for our Schubert energy balance model. That is incoming solar radiation short long wave and infrared radiation with a long wave radiation.
Yeah. So the sensor that they were shown to you yesterday, they're very sophisticated and very expensive because, and yeah, it may sound a boring saying again, but it's easy to split it, but it's very, very difficult in field to collect it. And well, when difficult, it means expensive, right? Because these values, you may collect it, the sensor for net radiation costs up to 20 grand, right? Just one value of your equation, right? Imagine. So yeah, back to the equation. We're splitting in the radiation. Yeah. Let me go here. Okay. As Karen was mentioning, this is the sensor that is using field to collect the net radiation. This is a pyrometer. Where we're collecting here, Karen, is a net radiation and also partitioning here, right? That is reflected.
Yeah, we are measuring the fourth component, that is already happened.
Oh, the 4 components. Okay. The total 4. Yes. She's an expert on the eddy covariance towers that as the instrument that help us to collect most of the data for the TSEP model. It
Yeah,
is.
and maybe here I can complement it for
Sure.
everybody.
Mhm.
The idea is like balance, right? Input equals output plus losses. That's also here, the statement. So the input comes from the sun, and the output is the energy that bounces back to the atmosphere, but also the heat that we're losing that warms up the soil. So that's it. So balancing both sides, we can just calculate whatever component is in one or the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. Here fine. I'm sorry. You were having a question for the class, I think, before you were leaving. I couldn't respond it. You were raising your hand. Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, fine. So in this part of the equation, I could go through these equations, but I don't want you to get lost. Really, these 2 terms of the sensible heat flux and the latent is very important to me to you understand. Because basically, what we are doing in this equation is I'm gonna erase all of this. Okay? Probably in board is a lot simpler to do it. We got net radiation, and I'm gonna call it sensible. For some reason, the convention is calling sensible heat flux H. Okay, latent heat flux LA, LE, and ground. But ground we're gonna ignore it by now. Okay, but this is contained in soil and crop. So we have a portion that is in crop, a portion that is contained in soil, illy contained in crop, illy contained in soil. And also, there is part of the radiation that is being absorbed and reflected. And that happens for each of these components. So we have at the beginning 2 factors of our equations that is split in 4, and now we're going to split in 8 different factors. And each of these factors we're going to start to measure in field by different conventional methods that basically is to understand like resistance. I have a diagram that may explain better that. Resistance. So if we understand that you know about first I asked you about thermodynamics, now I'm going to ask you about electricity. That's probably too much, but I just want you to associate this to electricity. When you have more you have 2 bodies, and you put some electricity through this, electrons going through that. But the more resistance, less energy, right? Same happens with this model. So we're gonna assume values for resistance of the crop and values for resistance of the soil, and we're gonna start to split each of these energies. Oh, this goes for crops, this goes for soil. And that when the main inputs for the model that we want to obtain. The most important input, well, there are 6 of them, very important, all of them, but between the most important input we're going to obtain is the fractional cover. I'm just skipping because I don't want to mess with it with equation. I just want you to understand the fundamentals. You have the fractional cover. Well, what we obtain from drones is a surface map that we can use in GIS tools that you're gonna learn later. We can separate, okay, from this pixel, big pixel, 80% is coverage of vegetation and the 20% is soil, right? So one first input we may obtain is how much of this area is coverage by surface of bare soil and the other is canopy, full canopy. Okay. But it depends on the crop that we're going to analyze, because it's not the same to analyze information for turf grass that is fully covered than for orchards that is just a small portion of the area, or horticulture that is even a smaller portion. And then he's gonna be can we take just a minute to break this, to take a break? Because I may need to rearrange how you're gonna explain this, because if I go to the fundamentals, it's gonna be very messy.
Okay. 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Karen, I need your help for a moment. No quiero ir en la ecuación, porque quiero asociar esto a los inputs. Más bien, acá quisiera más bien que tú que le ayudes a explicar los inputs, porque si voy sobre la ecuación, se van a dar.
No tengo los inputs ahorita en la presentación, estoy preparando.
Hay uno de LST que preparaste con
Del campo de Hall.
Ajá.
Ya, y esa, porque la que sé que prender con los inputs son cuando la data del Wellspeed.
Sí, porque si no, si abordo esto, ya se van a noquear.
Ya, búscate nomás la aplicación. De la carpeta que te pasé. Y empieza con un ejemplo del campo de Hall, porque lo sitúes en el contexto.
Sí.
Si tienes el campo de Hall, casi se ha hecho un experimento.
Perfecto.
Meanwhile, everybody got your pen drives, right? So there you find presentations of today in the pen drives that I just gave you. Well, not just, but this morning, before lunch. And so don't forget these, don't lose them. So every day we're gonna try to update information so you can download it or physically get the information. Okay? If anybody is missing, but maybe because I didn't find him or her, just tell me, because I had an extra pen drive, so I think that maybe someone doesn't have this pen drive.
Well, yeah, 2 extra, just one, make sure we still have 1 person.
Okay, so no, that's fine. Thank you. And also, as if we don't have time today, there are also a folder that is called data collection. I attach 2 tutorials for you to follow where we will do the fieldwork. So it's like, for instance, to install or to use EpiCollect, and the other is Field. So that's for paperless data collection, like using your mobile phone. So if you want to follow that before the field work, that's going to be next week, I guess. Just do that in your free time. There's another thing. Regarding the water, if you really need water, we always have water in the cooler. We're trying to reload it every day. But also the trash, we always have a trash can at the end of the road. So try to put everything there because as we are having desktops here, and if we have any accident because of the trash or whatever, it's gonna be very costly for us. For you. Thank you for your cooperation.
What is your master degree you're doing or PhD degree? What is related to?
Okay, I'm from Barbados, so I'm the only person I think here from science background, but the others from agriculture, robotic agriculture, so they have a very rich background in this.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and engineering, like for example, agricultural engineering and hydrological engineering. So this is our background.
It's very mixed.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. It's very interesting to know because it's actually very terrible to try the decent model that we want you to learn. But the concept behind, at least for me, it took me 1 year.
Which process? No, these concepts, they get to know, yeah, they get to work with them. I think faculty members from faculty graduates. Well, this is new concept to me, but I already read a lot about it, so it's not so hard for me. I didn't use it, in practice, but by far, yeah. And from I think my other colleagues have also been to these concepts and
You have learned something about the model in the past, by the way, or about relations. Plus, you have heard about that.
well, for me, no, it's new. But for my colleagues from faculty of engineering, they have learned about it before. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. I understand.
The practical method.
Yeah.
Very sudden because I know saying that you don't know. It's just that I can notice in the faces that like and I want you to just understand the concepts because
Yeah, basic concepts. Yeah. But I think in the practical application, like more understandable. So you have to make it in practice so you can understand. But anyway, even this not part of us. We try to do it, and I that
Okay, guys. Okay. Oh yeah, you were watching.
This is the ocean. If I make a tight series, let me repeat. It seems like the high values and the lower values. So it means the relative deviation Larger and relatively resistant physics.
Oh, when it comes to phase, evaporation also change of phase. So this is evaporation.
Yes, so it took high value means that we need more energy to evaporate.
It means that there is a heat of energy. A heat of energy. So the energy, quantity of energy is a value.
Yes, what that means? High value. What is the physical meaning of high value? Let it be. What is the physical meaning of high value? You know, high value is a sense when heat, it means a lot of temperature. Here it means a lot of energy.
I can answer that because when it comes to depth, I understand. When it comes to ocean, it's not different. Yeah, but we can go, or you can go, it doesn't gonna take back the concepts. Okay.
Okay, guys, hello, guys. Can you take it, please? We're gonna be back to the presentation. Okay. Hello, people. Okay, so I just decided to stop on the equation, not because I don't saying that you may not understand, but since it's very going to the fundamentals, I can tell that you can actually check. We're gonna go back to the equation later, but it will be more practical to go and look at an example about what we actually do when we collect data and how we transform that into irrigation values that we need. And I'm taking information from Karen. She lent me for this presentation. Okay, so we go in when we go to the field, we collect data with the drones or satellites. We collect the multispectral images that I mentioned before, right? We can read red, green, blue, and what we do with this is obtaining maps. First is maps of vegetation. Who has worked before with GIS tools? RG, QGIS. Yeah, well, for the rest, I have no word, and we will work together in the next days. You can rearrange the data that you see. And for example, there are tools that allows you to, okay, these sections are green in this range, so all the greens will be selected. So if you collect all the green images from your images, you can do fractional cover. You can obtain just a map of only vegetation. And you can separate that from the soil, and you also obtain a map of only soil, bare soil. As simple as that. As simple as that. And also, we're obtaining maps of temperature. So we are obtaining first map of vegetation. Now we obtain map of temperature. We can overlap these images and obtain only temperature of other crops as well, right? Another important input is the leaf area index map. Who remembers what is leaf area index? We talked about that yesterday. Or who knows about the leaf area index? It's not the same fractional cover as leaf area index. Leaf area index is a value associated to the vigorosity of a crop. It's not the same having a very thin layer of small leaves. For example, you have turf grass here. And turf grass is very small leaves, and there are a lot. There are 100% of coverage, but they're small and thin. But what if you have a bunch of branches or a big tree here? You may have thicker leaves and a lot of them, right? That's the difference with leaf area index and fractional cover. So we're obtaining there so far vegetation maps, temperatures maps, vigorous. I prefer to call leaf area, that's to myself. We can probably discuss with my colleagues that later, but I prefer to associate leaf area index as a vigorosity of a crop when comparisons comes. This example, this is a project of our friend Karen that she's working in turf grass. We're collecting data in this field that is 2 hours from here. And then when we obtain the maps and we obtain our inputs, this is how it looks like when we start working with the GIS tools. And each of these images, there are not the values that we saw in the equation. They are gonna help us to divide each of the 8 factors I was showing you in the equation. We will not see this further in the input session when we work with QAS. Just jumping into that, working with clusters. I prefer that to leave for later. This is important. I want to show that in the other presentation, that is, it's not this, when we have you just saw that in OpenET, you have like big maps of your parcel, right? We have a parcel like this, and it looks green, orange, red, right? And when you zoom in, the size of these pixels is so big that you can tell that, okay, for this parcel of 10 or 10 meters, I only need to irrigate 5 millimeters, 10 millimeters of water. But what comes with drones? In drone images, these pixels can be the size of 2 centimeters. And you don't go to the field and apply just each 2 centimeters a small portion of water, right? You need to rearrange this. But how many information and what's the proper length, right? Then it's when varies from crop to crop. In the case of satellites for big areas, it simplifies because pixels are big enough to take decision. But when it comes to drone images, we decide in the case of almonds that I'm working with, we are working with the distance between the larger distance between almond trees, that is 7 meters. So I'm rearranging all of this information in grid of 7 meters. In the case of turfgrass that we're looking at example, these are grids of 3 meters, 3 by 3 meters.
You mean resembling of good?
That resembling, we are resembling that with GIS tools as well, right? So we obtained our inputs map that are temperature, surface coverage, bare soil, and we are rearranging all of this data in bigger grids. So for the farmer, for the owner of the field, it's easier to take decisions. And finally, I'm gonna be back to this. Now we are here. So we receive our drone data or satellite data. We divide it to obtain our inputs, and we resample, as you mentioned. And we are finally running the TSEP model. Okay, that is an application that we're gonna see in QGIS later. But we may need some additional information, meteorological data, for finally obtaining 4 different maps. Well, we're going to obtain when you run the TSEP model. Four different maps. The first one, net radiation, latent heat, the sensible heat, that they call it H, and the ground. Okay, and the summarize of this data has to give you net radiation. So we will verify that when we run this model, that first, all of this value has to be positive. And second, the summatory has to give you values saying of net radiation. What is inside of the boxes is how we run all of these 6 equations that are very, very tough, but basically is, as I told you, is the components, I'm erasing this all the time, is the components of latent and sensible divided for crop and soil, absorbed and reflected. and the main sorry, I think it's here. And the main equation to estimate these values or each of the 8 factors is through the resistance model that we are assuming that soil crop has different resistance, and the resistance and how much that resistance is acquiring that energy is through the Stefan Boltzmann equation that comes from thermodynamics, right? So how energy moves through surfaces is explained by Stefan Boltzmann equation. So we're assuming resistance model plus Stefan's model for surface thermodynamics, then we get these long equations, and that's how we got each of our factors. Period. That's all. There is something here I wanted to show you as well. When we have a proper, just some takeaways for you about this concept. When we have a very unstressed crop, the stomata of the leaves opens and it transpires openly, and that's when this heat flux, the latent heat flux, started to go up. But when it's stressed, or we have a heat incident, a very large incident of radiation during the day, transpiration decays, but sensible also rise up. Okay, so these concepts, I may rearrange how to talk about this, because when we come to the relations between land, crop, and surface, latent heat and sensible heat flux is a total balance among them. That's why, for me, it was very important to you to understand each of these concepts, how it works for crops and soil differently. Okay. So we got, when stomata closes, transpiration is small. When it opens, the transpiration is large. Foliage temperature, the temperature of the crop goes high, the transpiration will be smaller, because since it's stressed, the temperature inside rises up. So for not losing water by transpiration, the stomata will close. So yeah, will close and it will have less transpiration. This balance is good to know, to understand, because in field, you may have your map, you may have your report from the GIS specialist, but you as an engineer, as a specialist, you need to understand, okay, if I'm having higher temperatures and I'm having very low irrigation, this might be the behavior of my crop. And is that, if my data that I know that I'm having in my report is different from what I'm watching in field, then you know that you may take different decisions. It's not always following what the map is saying, is telling you. You may take decisions from your head, because this is just a cold machine. This is just giving you values. Okay. This is just a very realistic way to see things, but I like to share that with you, at least from my experience in the past. Okay, that's all I want to share with you guys. If you have any questions about any of the concepts that we board, I'm so happy to respond to you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Mr. Alfonso.
All right. One of the strengths of TISEP, it's on the energy balance equation, and to generalize on all the different models that exist. All every energy balance model to calculate it with remote sensing all of them do really well the calculation of net radiation. Right on. And this is good because this is the total energy that we need to distribute it to these three components. G, as I mentioned, is going to be an assumption because this tends to be a very small value. Okay, so it tends to be a factor like or a fixed value, but tend to be a percentage of net radiation. Now, there are models like metric and Sebald that what they need is called anchor points. Anchor points means I need to know the energy balance of two well-known extremes. One is a location when the maximum evapotranspiration is happening, and the other is a location where the minimum evapotranspiration is happening. So a place where I have very low NDVI, high temperature, high albedo, another location where I have lower albedo, lower temperature, high NDVI. So these two methods to solve for H, they need these two control points, and it's up to the user to look in the map and look at the temperature map, the NDVI map, the albedo map, and look for those spots in the image where we can find these anchor points. PSEP, on the other half, is going to do a assumption. It's going to assume initially that in the area evaluated, the pixel area, everything is vegetation. And is going to assign a very high value to latent heat flux. On that first iteration, when recalculating every component, is going to show that when it tries to partition this into canopy plus LE of soil, we might start having strange values here in the iteration. So in the second iteration, it's going to take some of this information or values for canopy and assign it to soil. So it will iteratively distribute the latent heat flux, and in the process will solve H without having to enter control points. So why they choose this, or why not prefer these other models, is because of this. So why this is interesting? Why the separation of latent heat flux into the canopy, the latent heat flux of the canopy and the soil will be interesting? Because of this. This value is transpiration, and this value is evaporation. So internally, the two source energy balance model separate the contributions to the total heat of the soil and the vegetation. And here comes the trick. And this is the thing that we hope to achieve with Moises research and Sergio research. Crop water stress index, or a measurement of stress. Okay. Stress is an important factor to monitor or to target certain level of quality in the harvest. In fruits and nut trees and vineyards, they look for stress. Stress historically is calculated as the difference of surface temperature minus air temperature. This could be divided by a constant value or by other two temperatures that are established, T max and T min. Okay. This is how typically is estimated this crop water stress. Is widely used in this index is widely used to monitor or to provide a sense of the level of stress in the plant. There is another way to estimate this, and this is what we want to do. Crop water stress index is equal to 1 minus T over TO. T is transpiration, TO is potential transpiration. So here in the first version of water stress, this K coefficient is arbitrary. It changes with the crop variety, with the climate. So this value is very empirical. Has to be local calibration. But if we are able to accurately separate E and T, we don't have to guess anymore. We will get the same index, but coming from the energy balance partition. Our belief, we haven't reached this point. This is our goal. But our belief is that this index of stress will be more reliable than this one. And it will be generated by the two-source energy balance model. That's the goal, that with the two-source model, we get ET, but also we get the crop water stress index. That's where our research is going. So over the several years that we have studied the two-source energy balance, this is going really good. The accuracy is good, and we tested like what happened if we have shadows in the image. What happened if we change the resolution in the pixel data? So we have been we have been trying to shape the model to see where it might fail, but the model is quite robust. So with that knowledge, we moved the model now to from vineyards to almonds now, and we move it to urban areas, and the model keeps working well against ecovariance. So for us, the model gives us a lot of confidence to move into the separation of E and T towards this price, the crop water stress. That's our goal. That's Moises, that's Sergio's goal, to confirmation that we're doing well here and see if we can develop this index based on pure transpiration of the plant. All right, let's take a break, a 5-minute break, and then it's time to get our hands dirty. We're going to work, we're going to do an intro to remote sensing with Lancet, okay? And we are going to use the computers, so stretch your legs, get some water. We're going to work with satellite data today.